Hi, and welcome to Complete and Cast, the official podcast for Complete and Box video games and football. Today we're talking some gridiron, because we don't have to talk about video games every time. Deal with it. I'm joined by Brian Beversluis from the Cat Scratch Reader, the official SB Nation page of the Carolina Panthers. Brian, how you doing?
I'm good. It's about time to talk some football.
I love it. It was a very long off season for me.
I can imagine,
especially living in Eagles country. We'll talk about it a little, but sometimes 500 yards passing isn't enough.
Yeah.
So like Brian said, we're heading into training camp. Actually, just started for the NFL season, and gosh dang, I love the spring and summer, but man, I miss football. I try to follow basketball. I try to follow baseball. My Braves were first for a while, and now they're not, and all that good stuff. But it's football's where it's at, man. Just is what it is,
Yeah, I mean, the NFL offseason has its up moments for a week here and there. The NFL draft and free agency, they're always fun. But in the end, you're just roster baiting to whatever's gonna happen based on that. So just having the guys out there on training camp, hitting each other, making plays, and seeing the footage of it's just nice. It's refreshing.
Well, I mean, the first month after the Super Bowl, it's all right, what's our team going to do? Then you have free agency, then you have the draft. But once you get to May, June, July, you ain't got that much going on.
The dead zone of the offseason.
It really is. Then when training camp starts up, you're all right. Even if it's stupid stuff like, this person was late. You're well, at least they're there.
Yeah.
All right, so to start off with 2018 season, first we are going to just do a really quick recap of 2017. Brian, how was 2017 for your Carolina Panthers?
It was surprising in the sense that I don't think a lot of people thought they were going to make the playoffs. Coming off a 6-10 year, they went 11-5. They surprisingly let go of Kelvin Benjamin almost few weeks into the season, and then proceeded to go on a winning tear, which for some reason they just do when Kelvin Benjamin's not around. So
isn't that odd? Because so Kelvin Benjamin went to the AFC East with the Bills, and I gotta say, because the Pats only play the Panthers, once every 4 years,
something like that,
and always lose. You wanted to bring that up.
2-0, baby.
Lose.
Yep.
Kelvin Benjamin's there, but I'm not really paying attention to him, right? That dude is about as gifted and freakish, in all the, of course, when you say freakish about a football player, you mean good, that you can imagine. That dude is the biggest wide receiver I have ever seen. So why did the Panthers, why didn't them let him go?
Their justification was they wanted to put more speed on the field, and at first it was okay, that's interesting, and then they, like I said, they ended up going on a tear. They lost, I think, one game in the regular season after he left. One, maybe two. And all of them were to the Saints. So it's strange. But yeah, he was kind of a redundant talent because Devin Funchess is essentially him, but a little more athletic and a little bit shorter and a little less big. Benjamin's just this, he's kind of a head case. And he's also 26 or 27. This is only his fourth year in the league, and
quite honestly, injured quite a bit. That's definitely a case for him.
Injuries are a big deal too, but basically what Carolina seemed to figure out was that he wasn't going to get any better. He was at his ceiling when he came in the league as a guy where you could throw the ball up a jump ball and he could probably come down with it, but if you're expecting him to run a slant route against the corner and get 2 to 3 yards of separation, it ain't happening. Everything's a contested catch.
He is, just speaking of him real quick, he is the prototypical dude I would actually love to see on the Pats, because frankly, I do think Josh McDaniels does an amazing job of getting people in the right position. Somehow you have Gronk on a 5'11" safety. Well, rip, kind of thing. And I would love to see, a Kelvin Benjamin, hey, by the way, there's a 5'11" cornerback on him. Good luck, kind of thing. But clearly, sometimes it's not just skill or talent that makes it. That's just football, because, I mean, he was okay with the Bills. Again, he did have Tyrod Taylor, throwing to him, so that's a thing. But yeah, you guys really have an up and down. Every year, it seems like it's 11-5, 6-10, 11-5, 6-10. There's NFC South is kind of weird like that.
The Panthers have never had a winning season on an even year. since their inception in the league.
Uh-oh.
Never.
And what year is this?
This is 2018.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, they're due for another
since their inception.
Season. Yeah.
Since like 93. Oh my god.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Yep.
Was the 7-8-1 year, was that an even year?
That was an even year.
Okay.
2014.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, that's just one of those stats that you really got to just tweet that to like ESPN when they play Monday Night Football, just so you know.
Yeah.
I don't even know who's doing it anymore. Jason Witten can be like, by the way.
Yeah. So this is the year they hope to break the curse, but you never know with this team. So
well,
yeah.
I mean, just the NFC South from an outside viewer is stacked and fun. I prefer the AFC East because I like to win it every year. But like the NFC South, like just especially like the Saints last year were so nobody saw the Saints doing anything.
I expected them to be have another losing record.
And the thing that was so surprising about them was the defense. You know, Drew Brees is going to come out, throw for 4,000 plus yards, get 35 touchdowns, whatever, but then lose 35-31, right? But they were winning those 35-31 games. There was just something about their defense. Was that Marshawn Lattimore and just everybody just coming together?
Yeah, Marshawn Lattimore, the guy opposite him. What was that guy's name?
Yeah, unfortunately, don't know them that deeply with that.
They had another corner who was like an undrafted free agent who ended up being pretty good. Obviously, Sheldon Rankins from Louisville was their first round pick 2 years ago. He was pretty good. Cameron Jordan's good too. Like they had a lot of things come together where it just clicked on defense and they suddenly had.
And you know the funny thing when you get to the NFL playoffs, it's one and done. Obviously, playoff bracketing. So a lot of it does come down to what teams you end up playing. Your luck with it. I've had years where the Pats have, just so happened to run into playoff Joe Flacco, and it's rip, kind of thing. Yep. And there's sometimes like 2014 where before they played the Seahawks in the Super Bowl, they played playoff Joe, but then after that it was the rollover Colts,
Yep.
And the reason I'm bringing this up is I feel like if the Saints would have won that miracle game against the Vikings, which was fantastic game all around, I feel like they would have had a much better chance against the Eagles than the Vikings did. And of course it's easy to say that after the Vikings got blown out, but having Case Keenum there, down like 14-0, whatever they were against the Eagles, away from home, at that point you might as well just throw it in. But having Drew Brees there, you never give up. A good running game, Drew Brees, you never give up on that.
Well, on top of that, the Saints were dominating the NFL with their run game. The Vikings really weren't. Like most of their offense came off of just the fact that Case Keenum was just flinging it down the field a lot of times, and
good field position, good defense, that kind of thing.
Yeah, they had a good defense that put them in good positions. There were a lot of times last year where, despite the fact that their offensive line improved, there were times where people got after him, and like for example, the Panthers played the Vikings. They beat them pretty. The score didn't reflect it, but they beat them pretty decisively.
That was a great game.
Yeah,
that was a great game.
They should have sacked his ass 10 times in that game. They only sacked him 6. Like, there was twice where he avoided a sack where the guy had him dead to rights and he just managed to, like, underduck him or something like that.
Case isn't a bad quarterback. I don't mean to deflect it too much, but, like, he ended up with the Broncos, right?
Yep.
So I hope he does, as a Pats fan, I hope he does extremely poorly, but I like the guy. He can go 8-8. I don't want the Broncos to win a single game, but I like Case. So 4-12. Let's say you can go 4-12, but light those stat books up, man. I am perfectly fine with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're correct. You have someone like Case, and you just that's why, and we'll get into that. Remind me when we're talking about teams for this year. I do not feel confident in the Vikings because of the quarterback they have at the helm. Now, to finish up 2017 real quick, let's go a little bit deeper into the playoffs. That Panthers and Saints game, fantastic in the playoffs.
Yes, it was.
Great game, just back and forth. Why were the Saints the Panthers' kryptonite last year?
Well, they were able to exploit weaknesses in their defense. Like, there's a guy named Brett Coleman on Twitter who went into a really good breakdown of why the Saints were doing so well against the Panthers in the first 2 games they played that year. And mainly what they did was they ran they essentially forced the Panthers defense to play perfectly. They ran right at Star Lotulelei, who the Panthers have since let walk in free agency and signed Dontari Poe. They went right at him because K'Wan Short was more of a threat. And basically it forced Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis, who are two of the better linebackers in the league, to never make a mistake against them. And they did at times. And obviously Drew Brees is always good. And he's played against the Panthers defense for how many years? And it hasn't changed since probably the John Fox days. So he knows what he's doing. And Cam Newton was thrown to a bunch of nobodies, essentially, on offense. Like, Greg Olsen was back, but he was coming off his broken foot. Devin Funchess was hurt most of the year and still played. And then they had like guys like Brenton Burson and Kalen Clay and all these guys who barely deserved to be on a roster as his guys. Like, Kalen Clay dropped a photo, one of the best passes from Cam I've ever seen. It was in his lap.
Was that in the playoffs one?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, that play was... I know exactly what play you're talking about.
Yeah.
God. Like, and you just... It's so hard to get back in that huddle after a play like that. Not only for that guy, but for anyone, like Cam or whatever, and be like, all right, let's do... We had it perfect. Let's just do it again.
And even
like,
still,
oh my God.
Cam almost had a chance to win that game because they... very last one or two passes, he threw one up for Devin Funchess, and Funchess had a chance and just didn't make a play on it. He just misjudged it and hit the ground. Like, it was that close. And that's the kind of player Cam is that even with that giant gap in talent on the two offenses, he still almost won that game.
Now, last year, Cam, they talked about protecting him more. Did he run the ball less? Did they kind of protect him a little better?
No, they protected him better than 2016. Part of the problem is that Cam tends to hang in the pocket and throw down the field, and that's what they're trying to correct this year, but we'll get into that later.
More like quick passes and stuff.
Yeah, but the main issue was just that they weren't doing well when they wouldn't let Cam be Cam. Like, Mike Shula was trying to dumb him down into a pocket passer exclusively, and then when it wasn't working, they just went balls to the wall, and Cam ran for, I think, more attempts than he's ever run for in his career.
Wow.
And they obviously were successful.
So speaking from a Pats standpoint, where mobile quarterbacks always are just kill us. Just I don't know why. Just Pats can't set the edge and just keep them from running out right. As long as you have a mobile quarterback, let him do it. If Cam 3-4 years from now, how old is he? Like 27, 28 at this point?
28.
Okay, so he's 32 and his wheels are a little slowed down. Then make him a pocket quarterback, right? Like you can segue it a little bit, but while he still has it, bro.
He's a generational talent. Like, he's one of the few quarterbacks who can move like that.
There are, I feel like there are very few human beings that are that big, because he's like 6'5", if not more.
6'5", 260 pounds.
Right, and he can beat a lot of people in a race.
Yeah.
You know, he is a generational, like, you know, you have a Russell Wilson who is like anybody off the street and just does it by like guts, you know, and no O-line. But you also have like Cam, who's just like, my God, you see that dude, you're like, who's this mountain that just walked in the room?
Yep.
Oh, nice tight end. Oh, he's our quarterback. That's when you do a pickup game and you're like, we quit.
Yeah, exactly.
That's your quarterback, you're like, we quit. That's fine. Yep. So just to finish up on the playoffs real quick, fantastic playoffs, really was. The Vikings and Saints game, fantastic. Panthers and Saints games, fantastic. Unfortunately, the NFC Championship game, for Eagles fans, it was great. For everyone else, it was quite boring. On the AFC side, I think the Pats had, let's start with the Titans and the Chiefs game. Wonderful. I don't know why I love seeing the Chiefs just drop their spaghetti. Like, I guess it's just from Andy Reid being with... Because I don't dislike Andy Reid, but there's just something about it that's just amazing. Having a lead at home against, honestly, a team that shouldn't even be in the playoffs in the Titans. Yeah. And just losing it like that to just all this, like... Derrick Henry's a great running back, don't get me wrong, but, like, just giving it all up is just... that was a great game.
Yep.
And I think a very underrated game. I know people didn't like to see it because, hey, it's the Pats making the Super Bowl again, but that Jags and Pats AFC Championship game was fantastic. Vintage Brady. I literally was just like, well, it's over. Like, it was just one of those things where, like, I told you earlier before we started, I get these gut feelings. I've been around enough that, like, Pats have magic, and some days they don't have them, and I was like, they don't have the magic today. I can't believe they're going to lose to the Jags at home, but the Jags, I don't mean that in a negative way. The Jags are an amazing team, but I was like, it's at home, and it's Brady.
Yeah.
And they came back, and as we'll get into later, I forget, Doug Marrone, the coach of the Jags, took his foot off the gas, and you just don't do that.
Yep.
If you're going to lose by flinging it, man. So then we have... This is very hot and cold for me. We have Super Bowl 52, which in my opinion, 52.
Yep.
Pats and Eagles, which in my opinion is the greatest football game I've ever seen. I have never seen a better game. It had everything. It had one punt the whole game. It set the record for the most yards ever. Not, you would think, oh, well, Saints and the Bucks, some two crap teams just going... No! This game had the most yards ever. 41-33, I believe. Back and forth the whole time. Crazy fourth down stuff. The Philly special. Obviously, it's one of those things where it didn't go the way I would want to, but that game was just phenomenal. Do you feel the same way as an outside observer?
I was watching it, and I was thoroughly entertained by it, because it was just tons of scoring, and, like, I've always appreciated, like, very good defensive football, but, like, that wasn't a game where it was just two crap defenses playing each other. It was, like, genuinely chess games when it came to
the Pats can... I won't say they're a generally good defense, but they can. They can at times. And it was just that, like, everything both sides did was just outmatching it.
Yep.
And people forget this just because of the end result, but the Pats were up late. 5, 6, 7 minutes left. The Eagles had like a 4th and 2 that the Pats linebacker core, who, right? Yeah, literally who on that, since Hightower was out, couldn't keep Ertz from gaining like an extra 3 yards after like literally being wrapped up. That gave him the first, and the rest is history. Because they went for it on 4th. It was like the Pats' 35-yard line. The Pats were up by like a point or two, and you give the ball to Brady, bada bing, bada boom kind of thing. They couldn't stop them, and that was just the name of the game. But my God, I mean, Brady throwing for 500 yards, like, and they weren't like, the whole thing with Brady is people are like dink and dunk, blah, blah, blah. This was balling.
No, they were...
The whole, like, Foles and Brady were balling. Like, these were, like, crazy plays.
Oh, yeah.
Against the Eagles have an amazing defense. And I just, it had everything. It had absolutely everything. It had crazy plays you never saw before, and just, my gosh. So, again, tip of the hat to the Eagles. Enjoy it until September. I hope you go 0-16 now, but that's why we're that's why we're almost there to the new season. But what a way to take it out, man!
Yeah,
what a way to take it out. That was crazy. Yeah. I do love as a side. Nobody really likes Chris Collinsworth as a commentator.
Nope.
Although I love Al Michaels, and I love Al Michaels now that he's older and doesn't give a crap. Like, I'm sure you've watched enough Sunday Night Football that sometimes he says something that you're like, oh, did he? Like, because we live in a very PC age, and if you say something, people are like, kind of thing. And I can't name any exact examples, but sometimes you're like, oh my, kind of thing. I love that he's to that point where he's just like, doesn't give a crap. But Eagles fans were just, even after the win, were just like, for weeks, like, oh, Collinsworth just blah, 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 just like going on him. I'm like, dude, you won. Are you caring about the commentary? Like, am I going to talk about the commentary for Super Bowl 49 when like literally after the Jermaine Kearse catch right before the Malcolm Butler interception, they showed the helmet catch like 7 times. Like, was I complaining about that? No, they won the game. Like, get over. Like, Collinsworth sucks. We get it, but like,
I don't think Eagles fans are comfortable with the idea of that they just won the Super Bowl, because they always got to have something to complain about. So I feel like that's what they had to latch onto that to feel normal.
Yeah, so, I mean there was something going on there. So this last 6 months in Eagles territory has just been
so many videos. Forget
about it.
So many highlights. Oh, is that Nick Foles? Yeah, it's Nick Foles.
Dude, I can't. I've like, in my life, I've probably unfollowed someone on Facebook like twice. I have a ton of people because of the store and whatever, but like, no matter what nonsense they post, the only time I've ever unfollowed someone was when they got like a little too like overtly political, and I'm like, nah, this is social media, fam, whatever. But I probably unfollowed like 6 Eagles people because like, after the 10th time of them posting the highlight of like, this was the Philly special thing, it's like, dude, I saw it yesterday from you. I get it. Like, come on. Not unfriended, but like, dude, I can't stop it.
I can't be watching this every day.
Yeah, like, I get it. Like, congratulations. I said it the night of, but god dang it, stop it. So that was, like I said, what a wonderful end of it. So 2017 was, I think, all things considered, a great year of football. It really was.
It was.
There was a lot of teams that you don't usually see, Vikings, Jags, stuff like that. It was a good year of football.
It was. It absolutely was.
Moving on to 2018, all through the offseason and everything. Let's start with your Carolina Panthers. How'd the offseason go for you guys?
It was rocky. Having the whole Jerry Richardson selling the team over our heads was interesting to try and cover. And on top of that, the uncertainty of, are they going to really bring back Marty Herney after they just replaced him with Dave Gettleman and then fired Dave Gettleman, which they did. That said, all things considered, I didn't really hate a lot of what they did in free agency. Andrew Norwell got paid like a top 2 or 3 offensive lineman contract, and Carolina just spent a lot of money on Trey Turner last year to lock him up, so that they would have been paying 2 guards top guard money. It's tough to really justify that. I mean, they did what they could to get more weapons around Cam. I felt they made a very solid attempt at that, like trading for Torrey Smith. They traded away Darryl Worley, who was a starting corner, but he ended up getting himself arrested and cut by the Eagles anyway. Then they signed Jarius Wright, who...
Oh, by the way, speaking of Eagles fans, when that happened, every Eagles fans I saw, and I know you saw it too, was like, doesn't matter, wouldn't have played anyway. Yeah. You saw that, where it's like, he was a starter for another NFL. Yeah, but our team is so good, he literally wouldn't even snuff the roster. Why did he trade? Why did you guys trade for him? Yeah. Doesn't matter. We just had so many... We have so much of everything. Yeah, it's a great team. Come on.
It did make sense because Darryl Worley just, like... Carolina's defense had a guy that was taking snaps away from him, and Torrey Smith was going to get cut anyway, so Carolina was able to secure his services for $5 million a year instead of letting him go into free agency, where they would have had to probably pay him a lot more money and guarantee a lot of it. So they did that. They signed Jarius Wright, who played with Norv Turner for a lot of his career and is like a third down slot receiver that knows Norv Turner's scheme, and since they brought Norv Turner in to be the new offensive coordinator, made a lot of sense. And then they ended up signing C.J. Anderson for the veteran minimum deal. So they replaced Jonathan Stewart with somebody who was probably better at this point in their career.
Did Stewart sign with anyone, or is he retired?
Signed with the Giants.
With the Giants, okay. Yeah. And a couple other questions before I forget him for your Panthers. Olsen's back?
Olsen is back. Okay. Yeah, he just broke his foot last year, but that was early.
Like, because I remember he was seriously contemplating, like, retiring to do...
That was kind of overblown. Like, he was going to interview, and basically, like, after the fact, he said it was more of an experience thing to go interview for Monday Night Football. He really didn't plan on leaving.
Because he's 31, 32.
Yeah, I mean...
Something like that.
I mean, still got it,
tight ends can go to 35 pretty easily, you know.
Yeah, it's one of those things where he has a future in it. Like, last year when he was injured, he actually commentated on the Vikings game the week before they played the Panthers. So there's some clout to him being a commentator. So it's just a matter of whether he was ready to hang him up or not. And it just got overblown because the media caught it before he could say anything about it. And, you know, it is what it is. He's back. He's working with Cam. Things are great there.
Now, you mentioned to me, because we're in fantasy football together, you mentioned to me, now we're doing, I almost said PPG.
PPR?
PPR. Yeah. We're doing PPR, points per reception. So you're talking about taking, who's your running back?
Christian McCaffrey.
You're talking about taking McCaffrey real high. How has he turned out, and do you think he's going to get even bigger role with you guys this year?
I think he will absolutely get a bigger role with us this year. And he had a solid amount of touches last year, and that was with Jonathan Stewart getting enough touches too. They've been saying, and I would probably eat a hat if they actually did this, but they are talking about getting him 25 touches a game, which is insane for most running backs.
Right, let alone where you're going to get half of them as receptions.
Yeah, so that said, it clearly means that they plan on using him, and Norv Turner is no stranger to having running backs who can catch the ball and run routes. He worked with Darren Sproles. He worked with LaDainian Tomlinson. And McCaffrey has a lot of those same traits that make those guys good. He's one of the best. He's probably, honestly, the best running back in the league. He would have been a first-round pick as a slot receiver if he just went to be a slot receiver. So he's good, and he's going to be better.
How nice is it having a pass-catching running back?
It's good when your team knows how to use them. And
that's true.
With Mike Shula, he did at times, but there were other times where he didn't. And their emphasis right now is that they've got a lot of weapons around Cam Newton and can catch the ball and run. So the idea is for him to just throw the ball to them and let them do their job instead of trying to force it down the field. So that coupled with the fact that Christian McCaffrey now has a whole year under his belt. He's no longer the backup to Jonathan Stewart. Now he's going to be working as more of a tandem with C.J. Anderson and should be the starter.
C.J. Anderson barely played last year, right?
He still had 1,000 yards rushing.
Did he really?
Year. Yeah.
That was the quietest 1,000 yards you can imagine.
Well, that's because the Broncos
were terrible.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he's still got it.
Well, that's even quiet because like Isaiah Crowell was on an 0-16 team, but like us fantasy guys at least had him in mind. I don't think I ever thought about picking up C.J. Anderson. Like,
yeah, I had him in fantasy. He was doing pretty good.
Yeah. Huh. I guess that was just a very quiet one. You mentioned Jerry Richardson selling the team. Who ended up buying the team?
Dave Tepper, former minority owner of the Steelers and hedge fund manager. And so far, I really like it. I like what he's doing. Yeah, I mean, he went out and chatted about just him talking to the media. Jerry Richardson never talked to the media aside from there was like once or twice I can remember of the last 6 years where he did that. Tepper's already talked to the media several times. He's going out, chatting with the media. He was talking about all the stuff he plans for the team, like having more events in Charlotte Stadium, talking about redoing the stadium, talking about moving the practice fields. It seems like he's going to put the Panthers logo at midfield, which is something that Carolina fans have been talking about for a long time.
Where is their logo?
Their logo's in the end zone, but the middle of the field is the NFL logo. Okay. And for some reason, Jerry Richardson just would never stop that. And Cam Newton has acted so much differently over the offseason. Like, he was always very quiet on social media. Now that Jerry Richardson's gone, he's been all over social media. Like, every day he's posting something on Instagram. It's hilarious. It's entertaining. Like, it just seems to be a lot looser. And Tepper's more about, I guess, the family idea. And when they went and said, they were asking about, non-disclosure agreements and like what happens if you mess up like Jerry Richardson did, and he's like, I don't want there to be non-disclosure agreements. I want them talking about it if I screw up like that. Like, so far he's fitting the bill as like the owner that the Panthers really deserve.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So,
no P. Diddy though.
No P. Diddy. No, that
P. Diddy was the one. He was the one that everyone was like, P. Diddy's going to
I wanted P. Diddy. I did.
It wasn't that one of those things where it would be like a bunch of people.
It would have been. Yeah.
I mean, what did the team sell for? Like $3 billion?
Yeah. 2.6.
I mean, P. Diddy's wealthy, but I don't think he would have like $2 billion.
He needed to gather a lot of people to try and get a majority stake.
I mean, I know they've done that before, but that's tough.
No, the NFL wouldn't have okayed it either. They want a one-person majority owner for most teams. So
that's crazy that I think it was 10, 15 years ago, whatever. Whenever the Bills sold, it was like less than $1 billion. Now, like literally any team is gonna like break what the Panthers did. Any team. I mean, it could be the Tampa Bay Bucks or the Jacksonville Jags, and it's gonna be like $2-3 billion. Like, it's just. That's crazy. That's...
It is.
Hey, maybe someday we'll see Amazon's CEO, Bezos or whatever his name is, be an owner of a team or something like that.
Could happen.
Who the heck knows? So yeah, I'll talk about my Pats real quick for the offseason. It was interesting. Let me just say real quick for all the Pats fans out there, bye-bye, Patricia. Thank you for Super Bowl 52. Thank you. Hopefully... Please, God, if I hear the phrase "bend but don't break" once more, or if I hear that they're top 10 in yards, or no, top 10 in points, I'm gonna kick some friggin' butts. That's how mad I am at it. Because like you hear all the time that it's bend but don't break. They give up a lot of yards or whatever. Like, no, get these people off the field, please. Get them off the field. I'm sick of this bend but don't break defense. Belichick is kind of the de facto defensive coordinator this year. That has happened recently in the past. I think it was right before Patricia, but they have this young linebackers coach, Brian Flores, who's like, from what people are, I'm sure the few times you have to follow the Pats that like you can't take anything that comes out of there seriously. Like last week, Dante Hightower, the linebacker, was like, "Yeah, Flores is like really more aggressive," and I'm like, "Dude, good," because like I'm sick of like third down and 5 and giving up 7 yards, right? Like, dude, we need a sack once in a while or give a touchdown. I don't care, right? But like then the next week, Devin McCourty came out and was like, "No, I don't think he's more aggressive at all." So you're just like, okay, something, whatever. That's just, you can't take anything seriously. But that'll be interesting to see. And like I said, bye-bye. We're going to see the Pats play the Lions in Detroit week 3, I believe, for Sunday Night Football. And I'm excited for the Patricia homecoming, quote unquote.
The revenge game. Yep.
The revenge game, yes. That'll be... those games are always actually pretty interesting. Yeah, so the Pats didn't get a whole heck of a lot. They lost Deion Lewis, their running back. They lost Malcolm Butler. That one was pretty obvious from whatever day the Super Bowl was. They did get Adrian Claiborne, who you're well familiar with the Falcons. I'm pretty excited for him. Their one big thing in this, last year was they could just get no pressure on the quarterback. good cornerbacks. What's his name? Their number one now cornerback is, name's eluding me, is Gilmore. Stephon Gilmore is fantastic. He is like a lockdown, what you need. Their safeties are good. Their linebackers, when Hightower plays, are okay enough, but they were getting no pressures. Here's a stat for you, Brian. What player on the 2017 Patriots led the Super Bowl with 11 hurries when the next player only had 1? I'll give you a hint. He's old as nails, not playing anymore, and was only on the Pats for about 6 weeks.
Wasn't Chris Long.
That would be Debo James Harrison.
James,
40-year-old Harrison had 11 hurries in that game, and the next person had 1 or 2. I would have literally, after that game, if I was Belichick, been like, cut, right? I mean, you can't have that. You can't have a 40-year-old have way the most hurries. So I'm hoping Claiborne will bring just like kind of like a brute force there. Their D-line and their D-ends were just so weak. I was so sick of seeing these quarterbacks having 5, 6, 7 seconds, So that'll be nice. I'm excited that they retained Sexy Rexy Burkhead. Who's another just one of those, scat backs that you don't really think about, but he can do it all. He plays on special teams. He just does everything. I had written down I was excited for Jordan Matthews because I wrote this yesterday.
Oh.
Yeah, you see it right there, Jordan Matthews, and he was cut today because of, I guess, a hamstring injury or whatever. I was hoping we would have an actual tall wide receiver, but I guess that's not going to happen. Can you say hello to Christopher Hogan being the number 1 wide receiver for the first 4 weeks?
Oh, boy.
At least we still have Gronk, and the good thing is, like...
Danny Amendolphin left, too.
Dude, it was a sad offseason. It really was, because I was like... After Deion Lewis left, I was like, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. Malcolm Butler left, yeah, I knew it was going to happen. And then the news came in that Amendola signed elsewhere, and I was like... Are you kidding me? Like the quintessential Patriot that's just like, I will be on the field for 15 snaps, but I will wreck the other team's butt, kind of thing. I'm still sad about that one. He was my favorite dude on the team. He was just fourth down Danny, So it was a rough offseason, but now things are looking up, especially with hopefully having a good defense.
There you go.
Can you spare a linebacker, please, Carolina Panthers?
Unfortunately not, because one of ours is going to be suspended for the first 4 games.
Do you actually want to go into that real quick, then?
Might as well, yeah, because we got so Spencer and I were talking about this before the podcast, but it was a decent segue talking about linebackers. So Thomas Davis, one of the quintessential Panthers of all time, like I would say, if you're talking about the mantra that they run by with keep pounding, there's Sam Mills and then there's Thomas Davis. Those are the top 2. And Davis was suspended for a PED obstruction.
After how many years of never having it?
He never had a PED obstruction. The worst part was they ran this drug test in November and they suspended him in like April for it. So he had no chance to prove like his innocence, and he straight up said, he was like, I've been taking this for years and I've never been flagged for it after all the probably hundreds of drug tests he's taken. So all of a sudden,
I mean, that's unnecessary to wait that long. I can even understand if it was like once they were out of the season, being like, oh hey, we have a policy, we don't tell you during the season, whatever. I guess whatever, but it's like that's too long. Like 5 months later, it's like I can't even imagine. Like, do you get like a call from your agent? Like
it just happened on Twitter. He put up a thing and he just apologized.
Hey, you're suspended. What?
Like
right?
he was mad enough about it. This was supposed to be his last year, and he even said he was like, after this, I don't know. He's like, I might play for another year. Like that lit a fire up under him. So yeah,
and I feel your pain too, and we'll get into the deeper issues along with this. So Julian Edelman's coming off of torn ACL, didn't play at all last year. Obviously, that would be nice. Offense wasn't their bad suit for the Pats, but he just found out recently that he was suspended. Now, of course, like all players, they go in and they do their appeal. The big thing about Edelman is he was suspended not because of something that they found, but because give me that look. but because they found a substance that they don't know what it is. So 100%, look it up. It's absolutely a thing.
I remember hearing that.
It's not like this was part of the banned substances. It was, well, this is a substance we don't know what it is. So instead of being like, hey, watch out, because now we're going to put on the thing, or, hey, let's send out a memo, it was, okay, you're suspended. So, of course, he goes in with his litany of lawyers or whatever. How can I be suspended for something that's not on the ban list? And, of course, the NFL brass with Goodell and everyone with their utter power from last collective bargaining agreement said, we don't care. You're still suspended. So he's still suspended. Yeah. He was suspended not because of something that was banned. He was suspended because there was something that they did this test. I mean, okay, the NFL makes a lot of money, right? That's an understatement, right? So they're probably using, I'm hoping, the best out there for testing this stuff. And I get that there are a lot of ways that players try to get around it. Totally understand. And I get that there's new advances in science all the time. But if your dudes at this really high, I hope, rated place can't figure out what it is, how can you suspend them for that?
Yeah.
How can you do that? Now, I understand that you send it to the lab and you say, hey, what is this? Going on? What's going on here? Is this something we're going to, suspend for? That's ridiculous. There
needs to be a precedent.
And now there is a precedent that, if I was a player, I would literally, call 345 Park Avenue, I think that's where their address in New York is located, and say, hey, I'm going to take a vitamin today. Is this okay?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, at this point, the precedent is you can be suspended for essentially anything.
Yeah.
Right? And as they showed with Thomas Davis, you can be suspended for something you didn't know you did for several months.
Yeah.
It doesn't take that long to do a drug test. It doesn't take 5 months to do a drug test. I understand the NFL has a lot of stuff going on, but they also have a lot of employees.
Let me just double check my facts on that real quick and make sure that I'm correct about the timing here.
But even that being said, it's like the big thing that we're getting out of this, and we've seen this over and over again, is that this collective bargaining agreement...
April 2018. I was right.
Right. So 5 months. And this collective bargaining agreement... So essentially when the players signed it, it gave them some more rights to, having less long, training sessions, stuff like that, but they gave up the farm for it.
Yep.
Goodell, as we've seen before with the Brady thing, with the Edelman thing, with pretty much anything now, I forget if Bountygate was before or after that, but back then the Saints were saying...
Bountygate was after because it was Cam Newton was involved with it.
Okay, so... Bountygate, the Saints came out and said to all the other NFL fans, the Saints fans said, we got screwed over, you better watch out, kind of thing. And no one believed them, but then it happened to the Pats. And all of us said, oh my god, this actually isn't fair. And now it's happening to more and more teams where they realize, the Panthers are seeing it too. It's like, can you just have a line of reasoning for why he's suspended? And, this dude has played for 15 years, Thomas Davis, right? Yeah. And it's like, do you really think that all of a sudden when he's like, this is my last year, he's going to be suspended for that? Last year, or 2 years ago, Rob Ninkovich was suspended for, a similar thing, and he was like, the dude played forever, and he's like, I just do what I do. Why am I suddenly suspended? The big thing is, Goodell can do whatever he wants.
Yep.
And there is, the players... sold their soul essentially for more money and better practicing conditions and all that kind of stuff, but man, did they give them unlimited power to do whatever. It's a problem.
Yep.
And it's gonna be a really big thing. I mean, in 3 years when the next one's up, there was almost a lockout, if I remember correctly, the last one at the signing of the last one. My god, after the Kaepernick and the Brady and all this stuff, there's going to be some problems.
There will be,
next
absolutely.
time around.
Yep.
And that Goodell's not going to be like them. They're not going to want to give up too much of this power. And it's going to be a thing. And more teams are going to see it. Everyone back then, I get it. The Pats always won, blah, blah, blah. We're like, quit belly aching about the Brady thing. And it's like, it was more about the principle of it. It's like, I just don't see how everything adds up here and how it ends up with a suspension. I don't care. It's not happening to me. It will happen to you. Whatever team you're a fan of, something will happen to one of the players, and you'll, like even the Zeke thing, where like the Ezekiel Elliott, where all this weird stuff was going on all year. You're like, this should have been nipped in the bud right away, and it just moved on and moved on. So, like I said, I'll drop that right now, but that is something that we will all see.
Yeah.
So, moving on to a little bit more of the offseason kind of stuff, the salary cap. Every year for the last X years, I assume over 7, maybe 8, maybe even 10, has gone up.
Yep.
And it's really high now. I forget what the number is. I think it's getting towards the $200 million per team to make a team that plays 16 football games. It's getting pretty crazy. Do you see at any point, Brian, it's stopping or slowing down?
It's going to happen at the CBA in 3 years when they do the collective bargaining agreement, because the NFL's not going to continue to let it balloon like this. Because now free agents like Sammy Watkins are getting top 10 free agent wide receiver money.
It's crazy. I mean, yeah. Nate Solder, our left tackle, who's a fine player, all of a sudden is getting like the most money of any offensive lineman in the league. And it's like, we're talking like $15 million a year. We're talking, and he's a good player, but you're exactly right. Sammy Watkins cannot be trusted to be on the football field, right? He's always hurt. There's always something going on, and he's getting top 10 money. There are players that are mid-tier at best getting like... You mentioned it earlier that you were like, oh, I'm glad we got Torrey Smith for $5 million and we didn't have to pay. That, I mean, you just you're just like, I'm glad we got him for $5 million, because if not, we would have had to pay a whole bunch more.
Yep.
Torrey Smith, tell me Torrey Smith's like stats from last year.
Yeah, well, he was like third or fourth on the team in
right,
receiving.
Right, and he's getting $5 million a year.
And it's
know
not,
what I mean?
and
it would have been higher. It would have been higher.
It absolutely would have, because. See, this is what I made this point in the offseason for anybody who may want to check out Cat Scratch Reader, but this is how it's going to go. Like, the way the CBA is structured now, it makes more sense to draft players, lock them down in that first round pick contract for 5 years, and then let them walk or re-sign them. Like anymore, the guys that make it to free agency, there's a reason. It's not just because that team can't afford to keep them. It's because there's some reason why they're making it out there. So now teams, the supply of players is not like top tier. Like the contracts getting doled out for like Sammy Watkins and Allen Robinson were top 10, top 15 players, and they're not top 10 or top 15 players in their positions, but they were all that was there. So teams who need wide receivers were willing to pay, and that's why teams like Cleveland, who have all that excess salary cap, were like, F it. Let's trade for Jarvis Landry. Let's make him a top-paid wide receiver, because they could do it, because they have the money, because they don't have all that money locked up in their core players. So in 3 years, I think it's going to look very different, because players are ultimately, like, they either take less to stay with the team that they're with. Like, for example, a good example right now, Cam Newton took a really good team-friendly deal. It was only a little more than Matt Ryan got at before his new contract. Now Cam is getting paid like top 20 quarterback money for a guy who won the MVP award 3 years ago. Like, it's there has to be a stop.
I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo won 5 NFL games, and for a brief time, I think Matt Ryan's paid more now.
Yeah.
For a brief time, was the most paid player in football.
Kirk Cousins, he got 3 years. I think he could max out at $90 million. 3 years, $90 million,
and almost all of it's guaranteed. Almost all of it's
he
guaranteed.
Can max if he wins 3 Super Bowls in a row. He could make $95 million. It's not. That's probably not going to happen. But the large majority of his contract is guaranteed for Kirk freaking Cousins. So,
and Kirk Cousins, as much as I want to like him, is not one of those guys where you're like, "Hey, fourth quarter, one last drive, let's go." Does Kirk Cousins come to mind? Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Kirk Cousins. He's not on the echelon.
Yeah.
So do you know when a player like Sammy Watkins gets top 10 money, do you know who it looks worse to? Actual top 10 wide receivers.
Yep.
So that makes things
That's why you see
crazy.
That's why you saw Julio holding out this year on when he's got 3 years left in his contract. And
in a way, and actually that segues into my next point, in a way it's hard to blame them. But in a way, I am not a fan of these players who are already under contract holding out. Now, the big situation that we've seen every year in and year out, is the Le'Veon Bell situation with the Steelers. Now, I think that both the Steelers and Le'Veon in this situation are both both at fault in a lot of ways. The Steelers treat Le'Veon pretty bad, and then Le'Veon, for years would be, under contract and would not show up, whatever kind of thing. It's a very delicate process, but my thing is, like, with Julio, like, dude, it sucks. You're under contract, though, I don't know. I get, like, I'm not going to be like, door closed, it's done kind of thing. But that being said, you are under contract. I mean, I figure as you as a more of social media kind of guy and actually like kind of like interacting with this stuff more, you might be a little more on the player side. But like, my take on it is like with like the Julio thing, it's like, dude, it sucks, but you're under contract. In 3 years, you gonna get paid. But for right now, it's like, what? How is a team supposed to? It's happening with Gronk. Like now, who's that? Trey Burton. Trey Burton is the second highest paid tight end. Jimmy Graham is number 1, which you could be like, okay. Trey who? Right, is the number 2 paid one. So, now Gronk's like, hey, well, I am the best tight end, and he is. Why am I not being paid like that? Kind of sucks. But if you keep changing it around, you're going to run out of salary cap real fast, guys.
Yeah, that's how the CBA, that's why I said the CBA is probably going to drastically change because right now, the most successful teams in the NFL are the teams that draft and capitalize in that first 4 years of a player's contract because they pay their quarterback, they get those guys young, those guys have nothing, there's nothing they can do about the contract they have. They're not making enough where they can hold out like Julio and, end up getting nothing out of holding out where like a guy like Julio can. So the most successful teams are taking advantage of that for example, first round pick with the first year option or fifth year option, where like they have no choice. Like they can't just sign or not sign. They have to take it. Like it's just part of the rookie wage scale. So that's the thing that sucks about free agency for a lot of these guys. They sign those contracts because they want to get that money when they can, because you never know when your career will be over. Like, you never know when you're going to have that one play where it just ends it all. So, like, they're trying to get as much money as they can right now, but then, like, 3 years later, when they see the money going up, but they are still on this contract, it's like, okay, I deserve to be paid better, and some teams just aren't equipped to do that. So.
And I do understand both sides of it. I get it. But, man, is it complicated, and, man, like, if I was a good team like the Pats, Steelers, the Panthers, I would be looking at the stuff the Browns are doing and being like, I hate you guys so much. Because, like, the Chicago Bears were like, we need a tight end. Trey Burton, $12 million a year. Here you go, kind of thing. Again, Trey Hooten, right? Yeah. Who? So then, like, if I'm the Pats, like, Belichick's sitting there and he's like, just knowing he's going to get a call the next day from Gronk's agent, like, we need to talk, It kind of works like that in the real world, but it kind of also doesn't, especially if you're, under a contract. So again, it's very complicated, Brian, you're right. It's going to be messy in 3 years when that CBA. It's going to be crazy. And you have players like Matt Ryan, like he's making I think over like 30 million. Even if say it's 200 million as the salary cap, which I think it's a little bit less. That's 1/7 of your whole, I mean, I get the quarterback's important, but that's 1/7 of your 53-man roster that's already taken. And considering even your lowest paid guys are making, what's veteran minimum, like 6, 7,
just
8?
under 1 million.
Okay, so just say 1 million. So even if your bottom 15 guys are making 1 million, which is not unreasonable, that's another 15 mil. That's another, roughly 1/7 off. So, boy, when you are paying, that's why a team like the Jags, before they had to, quote unquote, had to pay Blake Bortles, where they were able to make this just god tier team. That's why the Eagles, as good as that team is, when Wentz gets paid, and for the Rams, when Jared Goff gets paid, they're not going to be able to do like they did this year. The Rams went out and were like, Ndamukong Suh, here's some money, all these players, here's some money. When your quarterback's making 1/6, 1/7 of the entire payroll, you can't really do that.
Yep, that's why teams like the Rams and the Eagles went for broke, because they knew they have 5 years to win a Super Bowl with the quarterback they have, and because they know he's good, they don't have to pay him like a top 10, top 5 quarterback. So,
and once in 2 years, I think it's 2, when he does get paid, there's a lot less around there for everyone else.
It'll be 3 for Wentz if you include.
Oh, he played 2 years. Yeah.
Because they'll most likely give him the 5th year option, which he really has no choice of taking. it's not a bad. It's not. It's an average of the top 15 guys' salaries. It's not terrible, but it's like, yeah, it's just those are the times where teams can really load up on talent and make a push. So.
And that's actually you brought me to a point earlier when Jordan Matthews was cut. A couple of my Eagles friends were saying, I was like, oh, they might sign Eric Decker, and of course they were laughing about that. They were like, nice wide receiver corp, haha, I get it. And then they jokingly said, because Eagles fans hate everything the Cowboys have ever done, it doesn't matter who it is, said, what about Dez? And I said, actually, you know what? Yeah, give us Dez. Please have Dez signed today. To which they said, well, if Dez is so good, why is he not signed? Dez's situation is worth talking about very quickly. It was very crappy of the Cowboys. Usually, I'm all for like 50-50 for the teams. The Cowboys messed this up because Dez was cut after everyone blew their money on spending $10 million on Sammy Watkins or $15 million on Sammy Watkins. So a lot of these teams don't have a lot of salary cap left. And all of a sudden, Dez Bryant, a player who should be paid pretty well, is out there. And you're making it look like you don't think Dez is that good anymore.
He's not the same player.
You don't think so?
No, he's a decent wide receiver too at this point in his career.
Dude, I mean, again, talking from someone who everyone's heard on the team, I would take him. But
no, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that if whatever team he signs with, he's not going to help out with. But last year there was a clear issue with him getting separation, getting open. He's just not the same guy. He's not as fast. He's like a solid red zone threat at this point, I would say.
I know most teams it wouldn't work with, but since we don't have a Jordan Matthews anymore, I'll take him, and I want him.
I'm sure if Bill Belichick can figure out a way to pay him enough that he's willing to say yes, they would probably make it work.
He was also looking for a 1-year deal, which I understand teams not wanting to do quite as much, because then you're like, hey, you did great. Well, now you're gone.
Well, a 1-year deal, you have no choice with that if you're going to give him guaranteed money. Like, where like if you give him a 3-year deal and the first year doesn't work out, you can let him go, no big deal, and you already paid him. But like a 1-year deal, most of it's guaranteed most of the time. So that's where that goes. But contracts are just super complicated,
and they're crazy nowadays. Yeah. All right, so getting quickly into we are in training camp. We're in training camp mode right now. So with the last CBA, I don't know the great details of this, but there is many less practices now.
Yep.
There are very specific rules. If you want to ever have a fun evening just reading about it, just read all the rules about how often these teams can do activities, how often they can wear pads, how often they can work out during the week. It sucks. It's very limited. And, I'm not talking about 2-a-days in the 100-degree sun, kind of thing, but, like, these players cannot practice a lot. Nope. And there's not much time until, I think the Hall of Fame game is, like, a couple weeks from now. Like,
the Hall of Fame game's tomorrow.
Okay. The Hall of Fame game is, by the time you listen to this today, because I'll have it up tomorrow.
Yeah.
The Hall of Fame game is today.
Yep.
People are playing football. And again, we're only a week or two into training camp, and you might say, well, they have, 8 weeks or whatever before the start of the season. There is not a lot of practices. There's a lot of film review. There's a lot of coaching and all that, but the amount of times they're able to hit each other, which is football, is not often.
Even then, the coaches can't technically mess with them during that time off. They have their OTAs, they have their mini camps, but during that time where it's supposed to be player time off, it's entirely on them if they want to get together and throw the ball around. A lot of teams do, but there's no interaction with the coaches. There's not.
And because
they're not allowed to.
Because of that, I do not think you'll disagree with me here. We're seeing the start of seasons becoming increasingly, I don't want to use sluggish when they start off, but a team that you see in week 1 is by no means what you're going to see in week 14 or 15. It's just not even close. Take that on the fact that you might say, well, they play 4 preseason games. Anyone who follows the preseason closely knows week 1 and 2, the starters might play, a series or 2.
Yep.
Week 3, they're going to play a half, and then week 4, by God, they are not playing.
Nope.
Week 4 is for all the players who are the 52nd, 53rd person on the roster,
Yep.
those people to make it. And honestly, I kind of like week 4 for that.
Because enjoy that.
There's people that you're like, dude, you feel for them. You're like, this is their livelihood, and they score a touchdown week 4 of the preseason. This might be all they ever do, but that's cool.
Yep.
They're going to get cut tomorrow, but gosh dang it, they did that. So, again, that's another thing with the CBA where it's like, all nice and everything that the coaches can't really coach you, but it's making for some tough-to-watch football the first couple weeks. I feel like they're playing, a lot of these teams are playing before they're ready. And the 16-game season, every game counts.
Yep.
You can't just lose a game and be like, nah, you know.
Well, on top of that, the other issue is that when guys are coming back from injuries, too, they have less time to get back in the fold. Like happened last year with Cam Newton. It took him 3 games to finally, like, come back to being who he was. And they played the Bills. They beat them 7-6 or 9-6 in week 2.
I watched that game and it was bad.
It was a terrible, ugly game. It was a bad game.
Sometimes you have a Steelers and Ravens game that's 9-6, and you're like, dang, that was
a great game. Yeah.
You know, I hate when my friends are like, 14-10. It's like 14-10 games sometimes are the best games, right? But that was a bad 9-6.
No, that was a really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. Zay Jones dropping an easy touchdown pass to end the game when they could have beaten the Panthers. Like, it's you're right. Like, the lack of preparation is definitely a big deal. And like, whenever you got like, it's not as difficult for teams like the Patriots, where like it's Tom Brady and his familiar weapons, or like Aaron Rodgers and he's got his familiar weapons. Cam Newton this offseason, he had some new guys, but he was there friggin' practicing with them the whole time. He knows the scheme and everything. But, like, the Mitch Trubisky's, like, of last year, and this year, like, the Josh Allen.
Especially if you're not the starter to start.
Sam Darnold,
Trubisky was he the starter to start the season?
No, Mike Lennon.
Right. Yeah. So Trubisky was just kind of put in, like, week 3 or 4, and it's like, your team, bud, and it's like, I had practices, but I wasn't taking first-team reps, and also there's not a lot of practices.
Yeah.
You know, that it's tough. And you also mentioned earlier when we were casually talking about this, football is about being hit.
Yep.
It's the nature of the game, right? And if you're having all these practices where you can't get hit, you can't get used to it. Every NFL player, when you ever see them talk about it, they're like, it was a walkthrough, great, but it's not football. If these players aren't getting hit, they don't know what to expect, their bodies can't get ready for it. Football's a brutal sport, you know. Even for just, you know, getting tackled like a normal good tackle, if you're not getting used to that, week 1's going to come and kick your butt, man.
Yep.
You know,
especially for the rookies who haven't been hit by an NFL player
absolutely.
before. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the main reasons, like, I have a hard time watching college football. Like, it's on Saturdays and whatever, I have it on when I'm working and all that, but, like, seeing Saquon Barkley run 25 times up the middle for 10 yards a carry, it's like, bro, you about to be hit by some NFL players, man. Like, those linebackers in college, like, that's all great and everything. That's why I hope you agree with me on this as another seasoned football person. When someone says, could the Alabama Crimson Tide beat the... You know what I'm going at.
Yep.
Could the Crimson Tide beat the Cleveland Browns? Let me tell you something.
Absolutely not.
The best player on the Crimson Tide is probably the 45th best player on the Browns.
Yep.
And 50 out of those 53 players would not sniff an NFL roster. The Alabama Crimson Tide would not only not score a point, they might not get a first down.
No. Yep.
It would be an absolute bloodbath. So there's sometimes when, like, you know, there's a lot of casual football fans. It's the most, you know, big sport in America. Well, but that's a way to tell when there's a pleb. When a pleb says that, you're like, dude, you do not know what you're talking about.
Yeah, you're
man.
an idiot. Yeah. Well, like, that's the other thing is that people see, like, a good example would be DJ Moore this year. The Panthers drafted him in the first round, and he was, like, completely dominant for the Baltimore or the Maryland Terps in college football. And it's like, he was good. He had, like, guys who wouldn't even get a call back if they called an agent about being in the NFL. That's how bad their group of quarterbacks was. And he was doing really well. And everyone was like, oh, he's really good. Like, he can run. He's got great route running skills. And now he's out. And he's doing well, don't get me wrong. But, like, in training camp, he's not polished. It's because in college, players rely more so on their athleticism. Coaches scheme guys like that open. They design their playbook around, okay, this guy is more athletic than the other 11 guys on the defense, so we're going to find a way to get him open and put him in a mismatch. In the NFL, despite those guys like Antonio Brown and Rob Gronkowski and all those top-tier players, there's not a huge drop off athletically. Like they still need to be well coached. Their technique has to be there, and the coaching has to be on point. On top of all of that,
on your average team, there's maybe one, maybe two guys that are like a Gronk, where you're like, well, they're always a mismatch.
Yeah.
Some teams might have zero, honestly.
Yeah.
Like the Pats are lucky to have Gronk. It's like, well, we're on the 5-yard line. Good luck. Oh, you're gonna double cover Gronk? Great. Yeah, we have other players.
First few
Whatever.
years of Brady's career, he didn't have a Gronk. He had Dion Branch for a little bit. He had
who was a great player, but you are Brady,
like Jabbar Gaffney. Like they weren't winning because Brady had those top tier talents. He just was. They made it work based on coaching and whatnot.
I miss that early 2000s Patriots defense every day. Ty Law, Teddy Bruschi, Lawyer Malloy. Those dudes were like. I would take one of them nowadays. Yeah. I would take one. Give me Bruschi for
Rodney
one
Harrison
game.
Would be good.
Oh
still.
My god, they were just so good. But yeah, it's like I said, college is like I can only watch so many runs up the gut for 15 yards. Like college. If that happens in the NFL, you're like, whoa, right?
Yeah,
you're like, whoa.
College football is more like basketball in the sense that like those top guys control how your team's going to do.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
But yeah, those to get back to our major point, that just not having just these college players getting used to getting hit by guys like me, like a more athletic version of me might make one of these AAA teams, right?
Yeah.
And I'm no Dante Hightower who's going to be laying the boom on you.
He will kill your quarterback. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's just not enough practice time. Injuries is another one I meant to get to. You're just not used to it. So you get up from this big hit, and it's like, you're in the next play. It's in 40 seconds.
It's also conditioning your hamstrings and stuff. That's why you see so many leg issues nowadays.
Jordan Matthews. It's like the second practice, and it's like, all right, go full force. Well... Yep. So, yeah, like I said, that's going to be... All this stuff is leading to... If we do this again in 3 years, we're going to spend the entire time talking about how crazy the CBA is going to be. It's going to be huge. So, let's go into the season as full. Looking forward to 2018. So, I guess in general, let's start with you, with your Panthers. How you feeling? Just general opinions, maybe best game, record, just whatever you want to go into there.
Well, it's an even year, so they're not going to have a winning record.
7-9, 7-8-1 again?
Probably 7-8-1, yeah. But on some serious things, I think that Norv Turner could bring back what Cam's first 2 years looked like. Like, people are talking about completion percentage and stuff, and yeah, but Cam really excels at throwing the ball down the field, and that's what Norv Turner was really good at with San Diego when he had Phillip Rivers and Chris Chambers and Vincent Jackson and Antonio Gates and LaDainian Tomlinson. Like, Norv Turner made that an offense where Phillip Rivers could have chucked the ball down the field, and I think that's what he's going to do with Cam Newton. And he's going to obviously use guys like Christian McCaffrey and Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore as also guys who just, you throw the ball to them and you let them take off with it. But this team is strikingly similar to the 2015 team in the sense that, like,
that's scary in a way.
Well, because there's a lot of guys who are really fast, who have a lot of open, like, have, like, good, like, running the ball with the ball skills. Their defense potentially could still be a top 10 unit. Their secondary has James Bradbury returning, where he's just consistently gotten better every year. He's a lot like Josh Norman in how he plays the game. Dante Jackson, their second-round pick this year, is the fastest guy who was the fastest guy in the draft, and he's playing corner for them. They have a couple unproven talents at safety, but that's also what they did in 2015. So it's going to obviously revolve around Cam. It's just the way that they've built this team. It's strikingly similar because it's accentuating a lot of the strengths that Cam Newton has, which is throwing the ball down the field and throwing the ball in tight windows to guys who can make really good plays on the ball, like Greg Olsen and Devin Funchess. So,
speaking of Devin Funchess, is he a clear-cut number one wide receiver?
At the moment, he is. Though the way the Panthers, for some reason, with Cam Newton, have always been best when they don't have a clear-cut number one wide receiver.
Okay.
They in 2013, when Steve Smith was like still good, but not like an 1,000-yard receiver. I think he had like 700 yards receiving that year. He wasn't really their number one guy, and Cam played great. And then 2015, Kelvin Benjamin went down. He didn't really have a number one guy to look at. Cam played great.
Some. I mean, you see that with some teams. If they don't have their security blanket, they spread the ball around more.
Well, it's because the quarterback is kind of forced to throw the ball to the best situation rather than being like, okay, we need 5 yards. I'm throwing it to this guy. So, and on top of that, guys like Kelvin Benjamin and Steve Smith are known for being like, hey, give me the ball when we need this. So that's something where I think that the fact that they got Torrey Smith, he could potentially be like their Ted Ginn type guy where Cam's flinging the ball 30, 40 yards down the field to him.
You mentioned Ted Ginn. Yeah. So if I remember Ted Ginn when he was with the Panthers, he was dropaholic, right? Just all day, every day. So you know what I'm getting at here. He's with the Saints now. And, right? Saints. Yeah. And every game I saw with him, I think I pretty much watched, this is sad, but I pretty much, like, almost every single game last year, I saw all 3 of the Saints-Panthers matchups. He's got hands like butter now. Yeah, he's got hands like glue.
He had one of the best drop percentages in the league last year.
What? Like, isn't that just like? Yeah. Don't you just hate to see where you're like, what happened?
He wasn't even that bad with Carolina. I mean, he had 10 touchdown catches from Cam Newton before he left. Like, he just needs to play with a guy who can throw a nice deep ball. That's really what it is. Like,
I guess. And he had a couple. I think he had a touchdown in the playoff game, if I remember correctly.
He was one of their best receivers last year, and I wasn't shocked at all, really, because I was like, there aren't many better passers than Cam Newton down the field, but Drew Brees is probably one of them.
Yeah, that is true.
So,
going quickly to your other NFC South counterparts, just to really quickly hit them. Do you see anyone usurping the Saints this year?
I think the Falcons could.
Yeah.
This is, from what they're saying, and I wouldn't disagree, probably the most talented roster they've had in a long time.
I mean, the Falcons are always there. It just depends on where Matt Ryan takes him, especially now that he's getting paid 1/7 of the roster. And
his last 2 years have been playing out of his mind. So
I don't think that anybody would say the Bucks are a big challenge this year.
Not with all this crap going on with Jameis Winston. I mean,
yeah. Is it time? Is it time?
I think Fitzmagic is gonna take over.
Dude, Fitzmagic is the luckiest dude in the NFL. Yep. Everywhere he goes, all of a sudden he's playing. But to get what I was just saying, is it time for them to part ways with Jameis? There's a lot of
I think they will.
There's a lot of nonsense. Like, as much as I love I'm a Patriots fan, so there's not a lot of fun as what's his name? The Eagles guard would say, they don't have no fun there. There's not a lot of fun on the field. The fun is in the winning and all that.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of guys that have fun out there, and Jameis does. And I like watching him play, but why can't you just hire someone to just follow you around, dude, everywhere you go? Just personal bodyguard / personal, don't do that guy. You got the money. Do it, Even if some of this stuff isn't true, when you hear enough of these stories, you're like, come on, bud.
It's been consistent enough now where I have a feeling that they're looking at what is he going to do this year, and are they going to keep him because of it? Because he was drafted, 2 years after Cam Newton?
2015, I believe. I believe it was 15.
I don't think so. Because it was Cam Newton, then it was Andrew Luck, and then the top pick the next year.
No, I'm pretty sure we're talking 2015.
You're right, it is 2015, because Geno Smith was 2014, I think. Or, no, he was 2013. Yeah, he was 2013.
But yeah, I'm
regardless,
sure,
they're getting close.
I watched that draft. I didn't really pay attention to the draft too much till maybe 2-3 years ago, and I definitely was in on that.
Yeah, but regardless, he's running out of time to prove himself. Yeah.
Isn't it weird that going on that draft, it was obvious that 1 and 2, whatever order, was Winston and Mariota, and now we're looking 3 years down the line, and Mariota's all right.
Derek Carr's better than Winston, I would say.
I mean, most are Mariota's a good player, but is he someone that you're like, yep, this is our dude, fourth quarter, blah blah blah. He might get there, but he sure isn't there yet. And Jameis Winston is close to being cut. Yeah. I feel so. It you just the way that it was being hyped up, and every NFL draft does this, but these were the guys, bada boom, that is what it is. Speaking of Andrew Luck, it's nice to see him probably playing again.
We'll see how long that lasts.
It's been 2 years. I can't think of too many examples where a player was mistreated more in terms of them playing him when he shouldn't have been played than Andrew Luck. That Colts, I still, from the years of Peyton, dislike the Colts. I don't care. Even now that Ryan Grigson isn't there, I don't care. But I like Andrew Luck. I don't like the Colts. I like Andrew Luck, and it's terrible to see what's happened to his career. They just sometimes just got to look at it and you got to sit him down. I mean, gosh, he was getting stem cell therapy in Europe. I mean, if that isn't a Hail Mary, what do you think is, right? I mean, that's a last-ditch effort kind of thing.
Yeah. They let him get beat up a lot over the last few years.
Not having an O-line also helps there.
That doesn't
so,
matter.
give me a bold prediction, record for just gut feeling, record for the Panthers, and place in the division.
Okay, bold prediction. I think Cam Newton does exceed the 60% completion percentage. I think he gets around 65%.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think the commitment is there, and they're going to really make him more efficient. And they've made over the last 2 years the biggest investment I've seen in a long time in the offense. So between Christian McCaffrey, DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel, Torrey Smith, all these guys with speed, they'll have Greg Olsen back. Like, there's just so many guys where, like, he doesn't have to throw it in tight windows anymore. He can find the guy who gets open. So I think they invested enough in the offense that Cam will be able to capitalize on being able to just throw to guys who are just there to make plays. So I think that this could be, I don't know if it'll be an MVP type year. I don't know if he'll be the best quarterback in the division, but I think these bold claims about his completion percentage, I think there's some merit to them. So
I mean, I feel like if Cam has a very high percentage, they're doing something right. You know, if we're talking like a 63, 65%, especially with his ability to scramble and all that, like, he's gonna have a good year. Yeah, like that just seems like that.
Yeah, if he can really, if they deploy him in the right way where he can throw to those guys and they're getting open, they'll definitely make plays because the defense can't account for all those guys and account for Cam Newton running the ball. There's just too many weapons. If they all stay healthy and if they're all deployed the right way, obviously that's up to Norv Turner. As far as the NFC South goes, I think all three. I think that the Falcons and Saints make the playoffs again. I'm not sure about the Panthers. Yeah. I think they could go 9-7 and not make it just because of how tough the NFC South is going to be.
It's very hard to send three teams to the playoffs.
They did it last year, but barely. Like they were all, even the last week of the season, they were all playing to be in the playoffs. So.
Yeah, it's very hard to send both wild cards from one division. You really have to. And you know, with divisional football, especially when you have, that's why the NFC East is always like a different team every year because they just beat up on each other. You have 6 games with your division, and you're just whooping each other up the whole time, and that's why that changes quite a bit. So, bold prediction: you pick one team to win the division.
I'll go with the Falcons.
Falcons?
Yeah.
They have a young and fast defense, and anyone with Julio, I'm fine with.
Yep.
And I think I'll be picking hopefully some of them in our fantasy.
Yeah, they got Julio, they got Ridley, they got Mohamed Sanu. Like there's.
So let me quickly go to AFC East stuff. I am gonna pick the Pats to win it. I'm sorry.
I can't blame you at all. The only team that's won it since how long?
It was
the Dolphins.
It was 2008. Yeah. And that was a tiebreaker, by the way.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be another 12-4 type year. Without Edelman and just kind of starting out with a lot of roster turnover from last year. I think they're going to start off a little slow, maybe a 2-1, maybe a 2-2 kind of thing. They did that last year. They started 2-2 and they ended 13-3. So I could definitely see that. A couple really cool games. I'm looking forward to the Lions game week 3. I believe they play the Jaguars week 4. That'll be a good game.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That'll be a good game. I am excited for every single Jets game because I do not fully believe in Sam Darnold. I didn't in USC. I don't now. I'm very excited for that. I love seeing the Jets lose. By the way, last year I went to the Jets. I went to the Jets-Pats game in New York, and that was the one. I don't know if you watched it. I think it was just a standard 1 p.m. game where the guy dove towards the end zone and dropped the ball. I think he dropped the ball right before the end zone. It was this weird thing, and instead of calling him down at the 1, they called it a touchback for the Pats. It was another one of those kind of weird things. It was, so we were watching and we were like, okay, he's going to be down at the 1, and because of some weird, he was bobbling it as, how if you are going for the pylon, but you're bobbling it out of the end zone, it is a touchback.
Yeah.
So it was that general idea. I have never been in a place that was as loud as that was. It was, and like I went back and watched the game. I watched the telecast, and that really goes to show you how the cameras can like divert noise, because I've never been in a place as loud as that. That boo was unbelievable.
Yeah.
It was deafening. And when you watch it on the telecast, you just hear like some noises and you're like, what?
Yeah.
So that's one of the interesting games. Going to an NFL game is expensive as all hell.
Oh yeah.
It is annoying. You're going to pay $50 for parking. But it is an experience. It really is, especially if you go to the later year games like November. You know, I don't really want to go to December game, especially in New England. But like, there's something about it just being there. Even when the Jets kicked off at the very beginning, right at kickoff, they did Jets, and it was like deafening. It was just cool. It's a cool.
Jets fans
cool
are a passionate bunch. The ones that have lasted.
They have to be. But yeah, that'll be interesting. I don't think any of the other AFC East teams makes the playoffs. I
don't see it either.
I'm not even sure if I can say. The Bills, I think, will come in second. They might be a 7-9, 8-8 team. I just don't know what they did to really improve themselves. Tyrod Taylor is not a great quarterback, but he was serviceable for them. I forget who they drafted.
Josh Allen.
I do kind of believe in Josh Allen, the big old Wyoming boy or wherever he was from, but I don't know if I believe in them
My issue
yet.
with them right now with that is they're splitting first team reps between 3 different guys, and that just drives me nuts.
Especially if one of them's a rookie.
Yep.
And like we talked about, there are only so many reps you're getting before the regular season, and then an Adrian Claiborne's coming for your butt. You know,
exactly.
It just is what it is. So yeah, I feel like I'm just hoping for, you know, a home field kind of thing, because in the playoffs, when the Pats go somewhere else, it gets a little weird sometimes. Really quickly, as we're getting towards the last, 5 or so minutes of this, I wanted to quickly talk about what teams besides our divisions we're most interested in. Just kind of interesting storylines, that kind of stuff. I'm going to start off by saying I'm excited to see the Cleveland Browns play football.
I am too.
It's going to be interesting. They finally, after using literally 20% of their salary cap for years and years, finally went out and got people. Tyrod Taylor, man, like I just got done saying, he's not a bad quarterback. Yeah. Jarvis Landry is not a bad slot receiver. They got some good pieces on defense.
Josh Gordon's back too.
I'm so glad to see him back. But yeah, I mean, I'd love to see the Steelers get knocked down off of that division. I'm not obviously going to pull for them to, win the division, but I could see, there's only one place to go up from 0-16, and that is straight up.
They went from having like 0 wide receivers last year to 2 pretty good ones. They already had a good offensive line.
Crowell has always been pretty good. You could see a 6-10, 7-9 kind of thing,
yeah,
if the ball bounces. I think that speaking of AFC North, Baltimore Ravens will be worse than whatever you are imagining them to be. Even though I just read today that Joe Flacco's balling out in practice. Show me when it counts, Joe. Show me when it counts. By the way, week 17, when all the Ravens had to do to make the playoffs was not let Andy Dalton go like 90 yards in a minute. And what did they do, my friend? I hate the Baltimore Ravens, and I love this. They let him go down. Did you see the end of that game?
Yep.
I forget who caught that long ball. It was just one of those ones where it was so crazy that all the Ravens players were so in shock that they're not even able to tackle it. Oh, I lost all bodily function. That was incredible.
Yeah, it was.
That was it, because it wasn't Green, or else we would remember if it was AJ Green. But it was just amazing.
I feel like it was Tyler Boyd.
You know what? I think you're right, actually.
Yeah, I think it was Tyler Boyd.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff in football where you're because going into the playoffs, I was like, you know what? The Ravens give the Pats fits. I don't care who is there. It's going to be a tough game. And then when they weren't in, I was like, great. I forget who they let in instead. I think it was the Bills.
It was the Bills.
I was like, great. Bring on the Bills. Let's go. Kind of thing. So that was just wonderful. Do you have any off the top of your head?
Let's see. The Chargers still, even though they continue to get bit by the injury bug, I think they've quietly put together a very good defense.
The AFC West is really up for grabs.
Yeah. Well, between the fact that the Chiefs are going to be hedging their bets to Patrick Mahomes, I think the Chargers are the only team that I see, and I'm like, there's not too many question marks with them. Like, Keenan Allen's good. Melvin Gordon's good.
Keenan Allen is
decent.
Keenan Allen is very good. If he was on like a really big market team, which is weird to say because Los Angeles is huge, but let's be honest.
Yeah.
They're not the Los Angeles team.
They got Joey Bosa. They got Melvin Ingram. Like, they have some good players.
Yeah.
Like, I think that this is the year where they could potentially put it all together and go, like, manage to smash out a 9-7 record and make the playoffs, because I think that entire division is going to be competitive.
It is going to be one of those tough ones. No team looks super bad. One of those kind of things. I'm going to counter with a team that I think will do worse than last year, and I'm happy to say this: the Seattle Seahawks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They are definitely.
I like Russell Wilson. I like his ability to obviously throw interceptions on the goal line. No, I will never let it go. By the way, we didn't mention it yet. The Atlanta Falcons gave up a 28-3 lead in Super Bowl 51.
They did do that.
And you know what? Here's the crazy thing, Brian. 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, or a billion years from now, they will always have given up that lead.
Yep.
That's kind of crazy if you think about it. 28-3 in the third quarter. 10 minutes left, you say? Okay.
Nuts. Yeah, just crazy. How could you let that happen? Yeah.
All the Panthers fans listening are like, good, they finally mentioned it. But yeah, I like Russell Wilson, but you're having a hard time with especially the Rams and the 49ers being better, convincing me that team is going anywhere. And, even it's just not the team it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Richard Sherman's gone. Cam Chancellor's gone.
And you know what?
Boom's dead.
That shows you two things. That shows you, one, as we mentioned before, when your quarterback gets paid, my God, it is harder to make a team around them. And two, your time frame to win in the NFL is less long than you think, my friend.
Yep.
Even after the 2014 Super Bowl with the Butler interception, you looked at that team and you were like, this team's going to be here a while. Guess what?
Didn't happen.
It's not. I mean, they made the playoffs in 15 and 16, but like, not the same.
Nope.
So another team that they made the AFC Championship game that I'm very excited to see is the Jags. I love their style of football, just pound it out on both offense and defense. I think Blake Bortles isn't the worst quarterback in the league. I think if you put Tom Brady on the Jags the way they're built right now, they are a 16-0 team. Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers. I mean, that team is God tier besides the quarterback. But hey, they got Bortles.
I'd like to see some better wide receivers, but I think it's passable.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But I mean, just defense alone, give them 14 points and sit back. Sit back on the
sit back and watch AJ Boye and
please
Ramsey just
sit back.
The wide receivers on the other team. Yep.
I'm very interested to see the Vikings, because I do think they have one of those Jags type rosters that is awesome, but I fully do not believe in Kirk Cousins to be that dude. Fourth quarter, Lambeau Field, December, down by 4 points. Kirk Cousins getting the ball with 5 minutes left.
One thing you gotta remember: Dalvin Cook's gonna be back.
He was
on fire until he got hurt.
You know the worst part about the Dalvin Cook injury is he fumbled on that play. God.
I know. I'm aware because I took a chance on him in fantasy and it worked out, and then he got hurt. So.
It's just like literally insult to injury. It's football. You can't stop the play because someone's hurt. Someone's hurt mid play. You can't be like, oh, but like you tear your ACL and you're thinking, wow, this is a long road back, and you fumble the ball on the. Gosh dang it! I just remember being like, couldn't you? Oh my God! And of course your knee snaps. So of course the first thing you're gonna do is your arms are gonna go crazy. Right? But my goodness. So yeah, like I said, I'm very interested about the Vikings. I'm very interested, but I just cannot fully put it into Kirk Cousins. They got real far with Case Keenum, but I feel like Case Keenum was the perfect kind of game manager, and I think Kirk Cousins he's prone to some mistakes real quick.
Not even just that. I think Case Keenum had the classic Nick Foles syndrome, where he was like, I may not get to play again, and he was just chucking it down the field, taking chances with his team. Like, it worked for Nick Foles, and I think it worked for Case Keenum.
That is a good point. That ability to just be like, F it, just really, Contracts are always in players' mind, and the ability to play the next year are always in players' mind. But if you're like, this is my last chance, you're gonna go buy. If it was my last chance, I'd either throw 5 touchdowns or 5 interceptions.
And that's pretty much what Case Keenum did.
Yeah. He had a game with 5 and then 5.
Yep.
So I'm gonna really quickly just go off the top of my head and pick the divisional winners, just because I feel like it. Tell me if you disagree with any of them. AFC East Pats, AFC South Texans.
I don't disagree.
Deshaun Watson is back, and I'm going to give him my dark horse MVP candidate. I'm not saying I pick him to win, but I'm saying he's going to be up there, and he's a dark horse. And if you're a betting man, he's plus 2,000, which means for every $100 you put up, you win 2,000. Just saying, it's a reasonable bet. Plus 2,000. AFC West, I'm going to pick. Not the Broncos, not the Chiefs, not the Chargers. I guess process of elimination there. Chargers, but not a team that goes 13-3. Like, the winner of that will be 10-6, 9-7.
Yeah.
And let's see, we have the AFC. Did I do the North yet? No. Unfortunately, I do have to give it to the Steelers. They're still too good of a team, and the other teams are too mediocre to go anywhere else.
Yeah.
I would like the... despite not having them win the division, I would like the Jags or Texans versus the Pats in the AFC Championship game. I think that would be a great game. I think the Jags make the playoffs as a wild card, and I think that AFC East is not sending another team. This is tough. I guess AFC West sends another team, maybe like the Chiefs at like a 9-7 kind of thing. It's going to be a bogging.
They got a lot of talent.
It's going to be a bogging year in the AFC. I feel
just like last year. Yeah.
Yeah. NFC, we got the East. I can't go against the Eagles right now as much as my heart wants me to. I don't believe in the Redskins. I do not believe the Cowboys are as good as they were a couple years ago, and I surely don't think the Giants are quite there yet. So picking the Eagles. I'm going to save the NFC North for last. We got the NFC West, which I am going to pick the Rams. 49ers, I don't know if I'm giving a wild card yet, but they'll be up there. Seahawks don't make it. NFC South, as we talked before, I'm never going to go away from Drew Brees, so I'm going to pick them just because of that, how that defense looked last year. Wait, who won it last year? It was the Saints, right? They won the division.
The Saints did end up winning the division.
Okay, change that. I'm going to pick the Falcons because they never have a winner win 2 years in a row. So I am actually going to pick the Falcons, but with the Saints making a wild card. And the NFC North, which I think year in and year out is one of my favorite divisions. I wish the Pats were in it. I am actually going to pick the... Give me yours first, because I'm about to go off the deep end here.
I can't go against Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I mean, that's where you want to go, but I'm going to pick...
You're going with the Lions,
I'm going to pick the Detroit Lions. I'm going to pick the Detroit Lions just because...
It's possible.
If you were like, put money down on it, I'm going to pick Rodgers, right? But if you're giving me good enough odds, I'm going to pick the Lions. Even though they'll lose that game in Week 3 against the Pats, we hope. I just... Maybe Patricia with that defense, with those players, with do they still have big play Slay?
Darius Slay,
yeah, they still have big play Slay. So
they
still got some good defenders on there. I could go with it. I think the Vikings will actually be one of the more disappointing teams this year. I'm not talking 6-10, but I'm talking like 9-7, maybe missing the playoffs kind of thing.
In the NFC South, I don't think, or in the NFC in general, I don't think 9 wins will get you in the wild card.
Yeah. Nine wins could easily.
10 may not even get you there. To be honest,
9 could get you in the AFC pretty easily. I mean, it did last year for the Bills, but you're talking maybe 10 might be like you're losing on a tiebreaker kind of thing. So those are my division winners. I'll pick the Saints to also make the playoffs, and I will also pick, what's the team I'm forgetting in the NFC West? We got Seahawks, Rams, Niners. Who am I forgetting?
Arizona Cardinals.
The Cardinals aren't there yet. Yeah. Sorry, Nate, if you wouldn't listen, but our one friend is actually a Cardinals fan. I'm going to pick the 49ers to be the second wild card, and the reason is this. I think the NFC North will be a slugfest, and a lot of times when you have slugfest, you don't really, maybe one team kind of comes out on top, and the others kind of like just keep knocking each other down. Mm-hmm. Whereas in the NFC West, you have pretty much the 49ers and the Rams. You can get your 2 free, possibly, wins off the Cardinals and all that, so... I'm really excited for this year. Like I said, for the MVP picks, don't look away from Deshaun Watson. I think a quarterback will win it again because a quarterback always wins it. They might as well just call it the quarterback award.
Yeah.
When's the last time a non-quarterback won it? Did LaDainian Tomlinson win it when he was going crazy? If he didn't even win it then no one deserves to win it on that.
I think he did get it that year.
I think he did.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, Deshaun Watson, watch out for him. You can't go against Brady, fortunately or unfortunately, as you want to think about it there. And yeah, I could see. Real quick, as a very very last topic here for 1 second, your dream Super Bowl this year.
Dream Super Bowl.
Doesn't even have to be the Panthers, although obviously it probably would be. Let me tell you mine real quick, just because it's very easy, even though I just picked against it. I think the world is due and has earned a Brady Rodgers Super Bowl.
Absolutely. That would be awesome.
I think we were very, very close in 2016 when the Falcons knocked him out, and I would like that because Aaron Rodgers, you never count him out, but his team around him, I would never count Belichick out, if that makes sense. Because their defense just isn't like lights out. It's not an Eagles-type defense, but you know, Aaron Rodgers gets the ball back down 4 points in the Super Bowl, I'm not looking at the screen.
I want to see Jags Falcons. Two teams that have never won a Super Bowl.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you have it where you're just like one of them has to do it.
Yep.
And the Falcons go ahead, 27-0, and something happens, and the rest is history. At that point, you might as well just
27-2 lead or something.
At that point, you might as well just demolish the stadium.
Yeah.
I know they just built it, but you might as well just
fire everybody.
It's done. Yeah. Arthur Blank, get out of here. Everyone's out of here. Fire everyone. Call yourself a different name. Just rebrand.
Yep.
It's like witness protection program for the NFL. It's like, we're the Atlanta Thunder now.
Yep.
Okay, great. So, Brian, thank you once again for coming on. I appreciate it. We could literally talk for 4 hours about football. I know.
I'm sure we will at some point. So,
thank you all for listening so much. And if you have any comments, anything like that, put them below, and maybe we'll get them this time next year.
Sounds good.
Thank you once again for being on. Check out Cat Scratch Reader, SB Nation's official Carolina Panthers. I wanted to call it a subreddit, so we'll call it that. Official page.
Official page, yeah.
Thank you so much for listening, guys. See you next time.
See ya.